Good. All right, welcome. In the last tutorial, we covered basically the interface of Premiere, and this is picking up right from there to just show some of the basic editing tools and the way that we can take multiple clips and put them together. In this instance, we're only going to be working with one video clip, which is This is Coffee from 1961. And in the previous one, we downloaded it. If you're taking the course through Iowa State, the file is available in Canvas. And if not, you can go to the Preliminary Archive and just search for This is Coffee. So going forward, right, so we've got this singular clip that we've imported into our timeline, right? And we've, by dragging it in there, we've created a sequence that is the same resolution and frame rate as the original. And as we go forward, we'll talk about different frame rates and different resolutions, but right now we're just going to leave it as it stands. So what we want to do now is we want a couple other clips. Essentially, we're going to take the entirety of this video, we're going to chop it into a few smaller pieces, and then we're going to mix those together in a different way. And so what I'm going to do is I want to make sure I have my source window up. I want to click in it so it's highlighted. And I have my in and outs here, but what I want to do is I want to come over and I want to find another clip. And maybe the Coffee Brewing Institute. I love it. So maybe I want to start about here, but not where this dissolve is. So I want to nudge forward a few frames until that cup of coffee in the foreground disappears. There we go. So I'm a few frames forward. Again, it doesn't really matter. If you find a different place in this video that makes you really happy, go for it. And so you'll see I already have this in and out point set down here. And I'm going to zoom in again just to make it easier to see, because I know sometimes YouTube has low resolution. You're like, what the heck is he actually pushing on? And so one thing you can do with in and outs is if you click in between the two and drag, you can actually move the in and out to somewhere else. So this is one way that I could do this. And if I hold down Shift while I do this, it should, oh, it's not snapping to my playhead, but I can get it close. All right, so that's one way I can move an in and out. The other way that I can move in and outs is if wherever my playhead is, if I click on the mark in or hit the letter I on my keyboard, it's going to set a new in point. And if that in point is after the previous out point, it's essentially going to erase the previous out point when it does that. Something else to note that, and this is a common thing on all of the panes that allow you to scale time, there's these two little dots here underneath. What this does is it allows you to essentially zoom in on time. All right, so currently this is the entire, when this dot's on this far edge and this dot's on this far edge, that means that you essentially have this line here indicates the entire length of the video. If you start dragging one of these in, you'll see things move and these marks get further apart. That means you're essentially zooming in on time, which makes it a lot easier to control where your playhead is. And you can zoom in to such a degree, if I go all the way in, that you get your playhead with this one mark. This little highlighted blue thing is the current frame you're on. And so this video, I'm pretty sure, is either 24 or 30 frames per second. I haven't looked, honestly. But if I drag this now, you'll see that it snaps forward. And that's because I'm at the smallest unit of time, which is 1 frame. And if I scale this out, you'll see that little blue line gets smaller as I get further from that point. And you can also hear the audio there as well. So I'm going to zoom back out a ways. Again, I don't really care. I'm not being super precise right now. I'm just really trying to roughly get these things. I don't want the production credits in there. I just want This is Coffee. And you'll see now the production credits are there. So if I just step forward maybe, or backwards maybe 2 frames with the step back button, and then I hit the letter O or click on the mark out, then I have this other clip now that I can grab and drag into my timeline. And so I'm going to go ahead and do this. And what I want to do is I want to click drag. I'm going to drag it onto this V2. Right, so I'm going to have it on a second layer up here. So I'm just going to click drag. And you'll see as soon as it comes into the timeline, it shows me how long it is and allows me to drag it and place it wherever I want it to go. And so, and you'll notice the audio is moving with it. If I lay it directly on top of an existing track, it's essentially going to cut the previous clip wherever this video is obscuring it. And so that doesn't mean that that's gone forever. It just means like that that it's hidden. It's not there any longer. So I'm actually going to pull this up onto layer 2. And once I've done that, now if we go to our, if I scrub through by clicking and dragging on this playhead, you'll see, right, this is my first clip. And then as soon as this clip is overlapping the other one, the new clip shows up. Right, with this beautiful music that I haven't listened to yet, right? And now it says this is coffee, right? So I have taken these two clips and I've chopped them together. Let's go ahead and grab a third one, and then we will look at some of the ways that we can start making additional changes in this area. So right, so I've got my two clips here. Let's go ahead and I'm actually just going to move my playhead somewhere else in this video. Lots of coffee beans. I don't know what that guy's doing, but he's really inspecting that coffee. He looks like he's trying to put it in his eye or something. All right, so let's use that. So, oops. Sorry about that. All right, so I'm going to go here. But what I want to do is I want to grab this area and I'm just going to drag it over. And again, I'm leaving this a little bit rough in terms of the length because it doesn't really matter, because one of the great things is that I don't have to make all of my final editing choices here. I can actually go and manipulate the length of these clips on the timeline. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, I'm going to drag this out, and let's go ahead and with this one, let's just stitch it straight to the back of the other one. And so you'll notice as I slide over, it will snap to the end of the previous clip when I get within a certain distance of it. If you don't want that to happen, if you want like a couple frames of black between the two clips or something, then all you do is you turn off the snap in timeline. I just uncheck that so it's not blue anymore. And then if I click on this clip and drag it over, you'll see that I don't get that snapping, right? You'll also see, if I zoom out, as I drag this close to the "This is coffee," I'm going to see this is the previous frame is what I'm seeing right now, right? It's basically telling me, hey, there's this other video that you're on top of. And if I keep dragging, you'll see that changes, right? And it's just showing me at what point I'm going to trim off the existing video that this is going to be set on top of, right? And so if there's nothing, that means I'm not there. And if there's something, then that means I'm like one frame over the video at this point, right? Snapping is nice because it just allows you to snap, right? And then because one of the issues is if you don't use snap, oftentimes there might be a single frame of nothing between two clips, and so everything's going smooth, and then there's this like black frame that pops in and kind of is jarring to the viewer. Okay, and so, right, as I said before, right, the playhead shows where you are in this window, right? So if I'm over here, you can see this is the clip I'm actually seeing, and this clip is hidden. However, if I was to say turn the visibility of this layer off, right, then I'm going to see that alarm clock again. Okay, so I have no idea what we're doing with this. It's going to be a beautiful thing, but one of the things we want, right, I don't want this coffee cup here, right? I just want it when he just goes in to do whatever it is he's doing. It's really bizarre. I don't know. He's got like 8 cups of coffee in front of him. So what I really want is somewhere in here to cut out that coffee cup that's in this first part. And I've got several ways that I can do that. But first, down at the bottom of the timeline, there's those two dots again with the light gray line between them, right? If I was to pull this all the way out, you can see how small these clips get and how long my timeline can be, right? In this case, it's like 10 minutes long. That's the default length. So, but if I zoom all the way in, as close as I can go by clicking and dragging to the right, then I'm at the frame level. And at the frame level, if I hit play, I'm going to get lost really quickly. But if I just scrub, I can scrub over until I find the exact frame where he first shows up. And so with him on the screen, this is where I want to make a cut. Now, there's two ways that I can do this. I'm going to zoom out on this again a little bit until I can see the edge of this clip. So one of the ways I can do that is by clicking on the end of the clip when the arrow's in there. And notice, oh, I don't think I mentioned this before, but any clip the clip that's highlighted with this white boundary is the one that's currently selected. So if I click and drag, I can drag this back to the playhead, and that will cut it. But sometimes I might want to say, oh, I want to use this cup clip somewhere else. And I don't want to get rid of it. I want to move it somewhere. And so to do that, what you use is you use the razor blade tool, right, or the razor tool. And so that's what the razor tool looks like. There are several tools here. We're going to talk about some of them. The selection tool is the one that basically allows you to select different things in your clip. The ripple edit allows you to basically roll between two clips. We'll talk about that a little later too. I honestly don't use there's a very few editing tools that I use. And there's a ripple edit, rolling edit, rate stretch. We can talk about all of those when we talk about more advanced things. There's also the slip tool, which essentially leaves your clip the same length, but moves the whole video forward or backward a few frames. And that can be really useful if you're like, okay, I need this to be 1 second long, but what are the best set of frames within that 1 second? And you can kind of scroll your video back and forth until you find the perfect one. And we can talk about that a bit later. But the razor is the most common tool people use. It's also, you'll notice if you hover over it, the letter C allows you to switch to that tool. And just as a heads up, to get to the selection tool, you hit the letter V is the selection tool. The letter C is your cut tool. And then wherever you're hovering, wherever that little line is by your razor tool, that's where you're going to cut. So you want to, and you'll notice it snaps to the playhead too, right? So you see that white line pops up. So now I want to cut right there. So I just click once. And now I have two independent clips, right? So I've got, this is the one that I'm interested in right now, and this is the one of the coffee cup. And so I want to keep this clip, but I want this clip to come over here and actually be attached to this clip. So what I can do if I zoom out down here on these two dots again a little bit, and you'll notice that it zooms around your playhead. Your playhead is essentially the center of the world as far as most of the tools are concerned. So so just note that if you are trying to zoom in on this clip, but you have your playhead over here, and you go to zoom in, it's going to not do what you want it to. You want to drop your playhead somewhere in there and then zoom in. So I'm going to zoom out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this clip. I'm just going to click drag this clip and drag it so that it's out in here in space, so that I can access it quickly, but it's not in the way when I go ahead and take this clip and I drag it over and move it. Now, oftentimes, once we're happy, I don't know. Yeah, so right now, if I was to play this, and actually, I'm going to set my master volume to negative something so it's quiet. But so if I play this, right, so now you can see that this clip goes from this is coffee to this guy looking in here, stirring and smelling and shaking his head and just doing things that are really strange to watch. And so right? So these two clips are together. Now let's say that I want to actually push these both back a little bit further on the timeline, right? Like I want to drag them so there's a little bit less overlap between this first clip and this second clip. To do that, I need to select both of these clips, and there's a couple ways I can do that selection. The first is I can hold down Shift, and I can click and click again to select both of those clips, and then I can click and drag and move those clips, you know, wherever I want to go. Let's just say wherever I had the playhead happens to be where I want that change to happen. The other thing you can do, if I undo that, and by the way, undo is Command or Control Z, depending on if you're in Mac or Windows. The other thing I can do is if I hit the letter A, and then what the letter A does is it changes to this Track Select Forward tool, right? And what that allows me to do is if I click on any of these if I click on this track now, right, but it basically allows me to select everything on my timeline all at once. If I hold down Shift, first I'm going to click off here in the gray so nothing is selected. If I hold down Shift when I do this, you'll see it just it shows one arrow. And what that does is it selects every track or every clip on the track that I'm currently on, right? So in this case, everything in V2, and because I have the link on, everything in A3 is also selected. And then if I use, if I click again right now, right, it's going to select everything. But if I hold down Shift, click, and then I drag, it should move all of those clips. Nope. So I have to then switch to the selection tool, which again is the letter V on the keyboard. And then I can drag all three of these clips together. So for some reason I wanted this one to stay out here, or if I wanted to make sure that when I was moving these two clips, I didn't accidentally overlap this clip and cut part of it, that allows me to do that. Okay, and so now if I run this, right, you know, the thing is ringing, the person hits it right as the cup moves. Maybe it'd be better if I actually move this a little bit further over. So what I'm going to do, since I can't see where, like, this clip at all right now, I'm going to turn the visibility off on layer 2. I'm going to say, okay, where's a good moment to make this change? And, you know, I think somewhere in here when her hand starts to go away, but maybe it's still touching the thing. Maybe that's a great spot. Who knows? So now that I know that's my playhead is where I want this change to happen, I can turn my visibility back on. I can hit the letter A to switch tools to the Track Select Forward tool, or I could come up here and click on it. And then if I hold the Shift button down, I can select all of these tracks, hit the letter V on the keyboard to get the selection tool, and I can just click and drag until this snaps to the playhead. And now I've got that set right as her hand's about to go away. The coffee starts pouring, and then it says the Coffee Brewing Institute. Right. Okay. So then let's zoom out a little bit. So again, we have this clip way over here in the middle of space, right? Of just the coffee spinning on top here. And this is probably the most boring few seconds of video out there, right? So, but, you know, if I wanted to now add this at the end, right? He's doing this, and then this cup's spinning. Let's say that what I want to do is I want him smelling the coffee, the cup spinning, him smelling the coffee, the cup spinning, him smelling the coffee, etc., etc. So what I'm going to do is, to make that happen, is I'm going to just zoom in a bit so you can kind of see a little better. I'm going to move my playhead over. I'm going to figure out, okay, he comes down, his nose is closest above the coffee, right about there. I could zoom in and make this more precise, but I'm doing something somewhat ridiculous, so I'm not really going to focus on doing it super precisely right now. But what I am going to do is I'm going to use the razor tool, right, to cut this here. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit the letter C on the keyboard, or click on that button. I'm going to come over and I'm going to just cut. So now this little bit of him smelling the coffee is an independent clip. And then I've got this cup of coffee. And what I want to do is I want to duplicate these two clips over and over and over again. And so there's a couple ways that you can copy and paste things. And there's a couple ways, right, we can select both of these things. We did the track select, hit the letter A, hold down Shift to select everything behind the playhead or behind the clip that I'm selecting. What you can also do, right, is I can hold down Shift and click. You'll notice when these clips get really small, it's hard to find a spot where you can actually click and not be dragging the edges. And that's another reason why the zoom tool here is nice at the bottom. The magnification, it allows you to get in a little closer, and then there's a bit more space where you can click. So once I've zoomed in just a little bit, right, we talked about, clicking on one clip, holding down Shift and clicking on another. You can also click drag anywhere in this dark gray area, and it'll create this selection box that allows you to select multiple things. Again, Premiere makes it so you can do this in many different ways. People have different ways of working. Figure out what works best for you, what you like doing best, and go with that. And so I've got these two clips selected, and now I want to copy and paste these. If I just hit Command or Control C to copy and Command or Control V to paste, I have very limited control as to where it copies it to, right? Currently, it's copying it down to this video track 1, right? And so, but I've found that this is really frustrating because of the way it functions. You will notice that it pastes it wherever the playhead is, right? So if I was to put the playhead here, and by the way, if you want the playhead to snap to a place in the timeline, you hold down Shift, and as you're dragging, then it will turn the snapping on for the playhead when it gets to the end of a clip or a scene between two clips or whatever. And so, if I was to now say Command or Control V to paste, right, it's going to drop those exactly wherever I had my playhead. But it's on this other video, this other track, and really, in this case, I want these to be on the same track. So the easier way to do this is once I have these two clips selected, I hold down the Option key and I click and drag. And what that does is it copies those two clips, and then whenever I release the mouse button, it's going to paste those two clips wherever I ended up dropping them, right? So now I've got, him smelling coffee, him smelling the coffee, and the coffee again. We've talked about how to zoom in and out, how to copy clips, how to cut clips using the razor tool, and how to mute things or to do solo. What else do we need to cover in this tutorial? Oh, we should probably talk about saving your project. So when I created this file in the previous tutorial, I created it as tutorial1.pr project, right? That's a default Premiere Pro project file name. Now, however, you'll see I've got this asterisk here, which means it needs to be saved. So I'm going to go ahead and go to File and Save, and you'll notice that it automatically saved it. You might have also noticed during the tutorial or while you're working, the Save dialog pops up and it automatically saves. Premiere saves all the time because I think it's more because it tends to crash. And so rather than resolve every single thing that can make Premiere crash, Adobe decided to just make it automatically save and stop you from forgetting to save. You do want to save. If you make any big changes, save your project immediately after that, because there are times when you make a big change, it crashes, something happens, and you lose it, and it's really aggravating. So just make sure you're saving the file. Something else I want you to notice is when we started with this, we just had one clip in our project window, and now we have two. All right, we have one that says this is coffee.mp4 and one that just says this is coffee, right? And they have different colors here. And if I hover over one of these, there's a little bit of a delay in some of this. If I hover over this image, you can see in the lower one, there's a different icon than in the top one. The top one shows me that this is a video clip with audio, right? That's what those two little icons mean. The bottom one with the green color means that that's the sequence, right? This sequence that I've got here is now a clip. And so one of the things you can do with Premiere that we're not going to do until later is you can actually have multiple sequences with a bunch of clips in them, and then you can create another sequence and have those sequences be the clips that you're editing in the larger sequence. This can be really handy if you've got different sections of a video or a film project and you've got something you're happy with, and you need to make it a lot easier to see, because you can imagine if you have, say, something that's got like, hundreds of shots that make up like a feature-length film, it would be a total nightmare, right? Whereas you could create, for every scene, you could create a separate sequence, and then you could have a master sequence that has all of those scenes lined up together with transitions between them. And so that's one of the ways that Premiere allows you to like not have like 800 different video tracks at the same time, or a timeline that's just a total nightmare. It helps you compartmentalize things, much like you should do mentally all the time, is pack things away to explode later. Okay, so I think that's all we got for this one. Those are some of the editing basics. So make sure that you save your project. And in the next tutorial, I'd actually have to look at what I'm supposed to do for the next tutorial. I've written it down somewhere, but we will do more things in Premiere, and it should be a whole lot of fun. And if it's not, I'm sorry that it's so boring. One last thing, I'll mention this in class as well. You can play video tutorials back at 2 times speed. So if I'm talking too slow, just speed me up. I'll sound like a chipmunk. It'll be fantastic for you. And you can learn twice as fast, especially if you drink a lot of coffee like these people apparently do. All right, see you next time.